And there you have it. La La Land is a political masterpiece. Before we even get into the core of this video essay, I already know what you're thinking. This video cannot possibly be real. I know, the title seems misleading, but after reviewing and collecting my thoughts of this film and the message it tries to provide, I've come to conclude that it's far more cerebral than anybody could possibly imagine, myself included. So, here's a quick disclaimer. Please take the opinions that I'm about to share with a grain of salt. I wanted to cover this movie desperately without recycling any opinions, so this video in its very nature is a massive reach. And, obviously, there's spoilers ahead. One thing that can be said with certainty from watching La La Land is that it successfully grasps the turbid nature of the film and music industries, particularly concentrated within Los Angeles. The film's protagonists, Mia and Sebastian, are oftentimes found battling in the struggle between creativity and commerce. Let's talk about Mia first. La La Land has previously been criticised for incorporating Mia as a passive character in Seb's story, desperately auditioning for two-dimensional acting roles and admiringly spectating his passionate jazz compositions. The film has also been criticised for Seb precipitating many of the film's key moments, like initiating Mia to write her one-woman show, and emboldening her to attend the audition that eventually kickstarts her career. However, Mia as an entity, as suggested by Annie Leibovitz, is celebratory of the audience experience. Mia revels in theatre and the cinematic medium, dances to Seb's music, and most importantly, expresses undeniable elation in doing so. Mia then takes these as inspiration to pursue her creative desires, writing and executing a one-woman show and starring in a film which invites her to participate as it has no script. For instance, the film's epilogue sequence acts as a fantasy for Mia of a life of success where she can keep Seb, although he seems to actually become extraneous to the life that she desires. In summation, I guess it could be argued that it's her creativity that allows her to succeed in the film industry. Seb, however, is arguably not as successful. Seb is obsessed with traditional jazz, that much is certain. However, his desire to revive this form of music is quickly met with suppression from the modern music industry, who repeatedly attempt to recruit him to, become cooperative. This, I think, speaks upon the nature of popular music, as artistic creativity and individual originality is slowly being suppressed in favour of familiarity and derivativeness in order to advance monetary gain. As it may understandably be to many, Damien Chazelle's La La Land is a musical revolving around the true pains and triumphs of pursuing the American dream. Though those many may be right, I find that La La Land transmits more of an everlasting effect on political thought. To me, La La Land is a very political film for its apolitical nature. Throughout its runtime, you would struggle to refer to any real examples of the film touching upon anything besides the relationship between its protagonists. In my opinion, the film is deliberate in its lack of address for anything beyond the aforementioned relationship. Let's dial it back a second though. Chazelle's film is truly a magical piece. The film in part creates its own magic by emulating the magic put to the silver screen by musicals in the old Hollywood era, clearly taking inspiration from many Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers collaborations such as Top Hat, as well as the likes of Singin' in the Rain. Homages to these films are clearly paid during the film's various musical numbers, where we see a multitude of extensive tracking shots, as well as crane shots, which were made available through the film's use of sound stages. This inspiration goes all the way to the film's use of a 2.55 to 1 CinemaScope aspect ratio, which imitates largely successful musicals from the early 1960s, like West Side Story and The Sound of Music, which utilised widescreen to portray the scale of landscapes and setting as a whole. However, some, myself included, believe that Chazelle's commentary concerns the apolitical sense of nostalgia that this film instills. Let's take Sebastian as an example. Seb talks about his adoration of jazz almost in a fetish-like manner, talking about how jazz is dying. Although he joins a band called The Messengers, which divert from Seb's love of pure jazz, which was embodied by Charlie Parker, the film portrays this decision as a largely soulless one that will only serve to facilitate a revival of Seb's favoured style. Now, it's time for a history lesson. Charlie Parker, who died in 1955, was succeeded by the likes of Charles Mingus and John Coltrane, who were renowned for experimenting with fusing traditional jazz with more avant-garde elements. Jazz artists like these were greatly influential on pioneers of the jazz-funk genre in the 1970s, who experimented with electrical elements, including Wayne Shorter, who co-founded the band Weather Report. Mingus and Coltrane were also far more politically engaged, openly advocating for the extension of civil rights and fighting against segregation in the United States through their empowering music. Notably, the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, wherein a KKK attack on a church in Birmingham, Alabama killed 4 girls and injured between 14 and 22 others, prompted John Coltrane to make a deeply reflective and mournful composition which was rather conspicuously titled Alabama. I suppose my point here is that Seb desires a return to a world before jazz became political, a time when LA was plagued by racism however, where in the 1940s black and Latino jazz fans were beaten by mobs because of their fashion sense. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not calling Seb a racist, but it is rather ironic that the antagonist of his story is played by one of the most philanthropic musicians currently advocating for social justice in the United States. Nevertheless, the general idea here is that Seb embodies the view of Damien Chazelle that we should not be so unconscious in our nostalgia, and that the diversity of the present day deserves celebration equal to that of the individuals who determined our futures. The theme of transformation is also obviously prevalent in La La Land. I mean, it's even significant at an aesthetical level, embodied by the purple skies of Hollywood and the brooding lights of Seb's jazz club. Not only is this deeply interlinked with the previous point, but I also think it's reflective of me and Sebastian's relationship being profoundly connected to the history of the United States, and not simply Hollywood. Mia and Sebastian's relationship can be characterized by 3 defining stages. It starts with a vivid sense of optimism, as all loving and supportive relationships do. Some would even dare to call it the honeymoon period. What immediately follows, however, is a terrible feeling of unrest and tension. No one's quite sure how the previously euphoric relationship is going to continue to transpire, if at all. And, though very bittersweet, it ends with a sense of forbearance and acceptance. Now, I think those 3 stages are considerably illustrative of American society. An obvious starting point here that has defining elements of optimism is the beginning of the United States. The attainment of American independence was incredibly auspicious to American society. More than anything, this provided Americans the belief necessary to support the government established by the Founding Fathers for their protection from tyranny. Nevertheless, the tranquility of the United States was relatively short-lived, with its agitation soon exceeding the importance of its successes. Believe me, there are quite a few examples for this stage, so allow me to try and condense this for you. An immediate example that may come to your mind is race relations throughout the duration of the United States' existence. This has been important throughout time, perhaps from the abolition of slavery extending to the 1992 Los Angeles riots. Now, that's not to say the fight against racism isn't continuing today, but if we're looking at the process of desegregation, the battle for civil rights, and the integration of black people into what Eminem calls white America, this seems a reasonable chronology. Now, there are far more issues that definitely brought forward the disillusionment of American society towards their nation. Like the endless chaos of the Cold War, the Sand Creek Massacre, the Chinese Confession Program, the failures of the Tet Offensive, the My Lai Massacre, the repatriation of Mexican Americans, the lies of Vietnamization and the Watergate scandal, homophobia, the existence of the NRA, the influence of Ayn Rand on conservatism, Operation Ajax, so many proxy wars, maybe even the moon landing. As you can tell, I could probably go on. Notwithstanding the many previous events and ideas, the general point here is that America's chaos disguised by its democracy does in fact exist. And, more importantly, it has impacted American society greatly, and the relationship between America and its people has always been turbulent, regardless of individual liberties and pleasures. America is a nation so polarized that there is room for every single individual to have been displeased and disillusioned, no matter where they lie on the political spectrum. However, as with all relationships that eventually end, there is a choice to accept the way things have transpired, no matter how turbulent that relationship may have been. It may even bring you closer together. To me, this is deeply reflective of post-9/11 society. Despite the tremendous suffering caused by 9/11, and in fairness the Columbine High School massacre, they both had a profound effect on American society. I think, more than anything, it made a lot of people grateful that they either survived or that they didn't have to experience such tragedy. In spite of the individuality of the American dream, and the partisanship of American government and society, these devastating events did bring so many together. I think Bittersweet is definitely a weird way to describe that feeling given the circumstances, but there really is no way to label it. Perhaps no label is necessary. And there you have it. La La Land is a political masterpiece.